Good. Good seeing you. I don't know. Oh, you are doing it. That's right. It's Janine Tom. It gives you a nice little thing. Dr. Khan's absence. It's the one and only premier, Dr. Thurman. Yeah, that's what she wrote. She did. Good morning. How are you doing? Good to see you.
Good. Yeah, glad to see you.
Good to see you.
They don't have to see you.
I can't do it because of Jessica being like.
Yeah, if Christine doesn't.
Could be the rainfall.
Oh, and Lafayette, it's flooded. The street flood in Lafayette.
You know, I probably read it about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
I left New Iberia at 8:20.
Yeah, you did. You see that.
And I was in Henderson.
I left at 8:30, 35, and it was just starting. By the time I hit the free right out of the way, it was just going.
You can see I was here. I left you long. I was just ahead of us.
Yeah.
I'll call you.
Let's see. I can find my script.
Does Bruce have the script up, please?
Well, let's ask him. Or Miss Carol may have it.
Bruce. Bruce.
Yeah.
He will. Okay.
He's supposed to be here.
Yes.
Not everybody can be like.
Just. I can call you back. I will. Sure will. Yes, sir. Thank you.
If he comes out here.
All right. You ready? I think so.
All right. Good morning. I now call to order today's meeting of the Board of Supervisors for the University of Louisiana System. Ms. Carroll, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Barry Busada, Dr. Jimmy Clark,
Here.
Dr. John Condos, Mr. Steve Leatherman. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Steve Davison,
Here.
Ms. Lola Donahoe,
Present.
Mr. Ethan Estes,
Here.
Ms. Joe Leatherman,
Here.
Mr. Al Perkins, Mr. Dana Peterson, Ms. Elizabeth Pierre,
Here.
Mr. Virgil Robinson,
Here.
Mr. Mark Romero,
Here.
Ms. Christine Russell, Mr. Joe Salter, Ms. Brad Stevens,
Here.
Ms. Julie Stokes.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. At this time, we'll have invocation. Ms. Donahoe, would you please lead us in invocation as we begin today's business?
Yes, I will. Would you join me in prayer, please? Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for the many blessings you've bestowed upon us. Thank you so much for all you've done for us, and help us to have the wisdom as we make the decisions that will affect the lives of our students, our faculty and staff throughout our 9 universities. Lord, there are many struggling with health issues, and we pray your watch care over them. Guide us in all that we do and help us always to be the conduit of your love and compassion to all that we serve. Through Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Donahoe. At this time, may I please have a motion and a second to dispense with committee deliberations and to meet as a committee of the whole?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Clark, second by Supervisor Donahoe. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Also, I would like to advise that any member of the audience would like to make a public comment on an agenda item, please use the comment cards located on the table in the back and give it to a staff member. At this time, may I please have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the June board meeting?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Estes, seconded by Ms. Leatherman. Are there any questions, any corrections? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, that motion carries. Again, we are meeting as a committee of the whole and everyone can vote on all items. Each committee chair will conduct the business of that particular committee. Are there any questions? Thank you. At this time, Dr. Claire Norris will give us an update on the Reginald F. Lewis Scholars. Dr. Norris.
Good morning.
Morning.
You guys may remember a year ago, we sat here and are you able to hear me?
I don't think it's a mic. I can hear you, but I don't. But
It's definitely on.
you have to be real close.
Hello? Better? All right. You guys may remember that a year ago, we came before the board with our first cohort of Reginald F. Lewis Scholars. And today, I'm excited to introduce you to our second cohort. Because of time, I won't call out all their names, but all members of the second cohort, will you please stand? We are so excited to welcome this new group. We have seen brilliance, excellence, grit already. And so watch out. We've got a lot to see this year. When we put this program together, we thought about the components that were important to ensure that our scholars succeed. We have the academic component. That's the internship. We've talked a lot about studying abroad, which I hope some of you will join us. We have a research project. There's the social component, that's mentorship. That's the scholar retreat, which we are at now and have enjoyed. Thank you to the board members who were able to join us last night. We appreciated that. And we also have the community aspect, and that's community service. And I thought, who better to tell you about these components than our scholars? So I'll introduce Robert Hill. He's an art history major at UNO, and he will talk about his internship, and just not yet, Robert. And then Lance Jones, a political science major at Nichols, will talk a little bit about the social component. And then our Ebenezer, also the recipient of the James Carter Exemplary Leadership Award, a business admin major at Northwestern, he will talk about the community piece. Take it away, guys.
Good morning, board members. As Dr. Norris has said, I'm Robert Hill, a junior at the University of New Orleans. As an arts history major, I plan on building on top of my experience to become a conservator. I've always been more of a hands-on learner and like to blend my strengths and creativity with my affection for self-expression. During my internship at the Ogden Museum of Southern Art, I was able to set footing in my degree interest through condition reports of incoming exhibition pieces. The internship also broadened my understanding of the various career options available within the museum. I was mainly tasked with organizing a juried ceramics exhibition called Are the Cup. Though I had some initial doubts about my responsibilities and duties during, I quickly grew accustomed to the fast-paced nature of the environment. Working with the staff there was my favorite part of the internship, solely based on their commitment to whatever project they were working on. Thanks to connections within the Reginald F. Lewis program, I was able to create my own network with the curators and administrators who I found myself working with during my internship.
Thank you, Robert.
Greetings. Good morning. My name is Lance Jones, previously stated from Nicholls State University. I'm here to talk to you about the social piece. So the first time we got with the scholars program, it was always an easy feeling, never hard. So we just knew that the mentorship would come eventually, and just being a part of the program, the mentorship from the Black Caucus and the mentorship that we provided throughout the various communities that we visited has always been just unmatched. It's unmatched to be able to give back, mentor to young Black males coming up trying to fill shoes and create their own shoes and footprint. So then next, our scholars retreat, from the very first scholars retreat, we were very nervous. It was something new. We had never traveled together before, but just being around each other and surrounding yourself with Black males that are looking to succeed, and the funding and mentorship from the UL system and the coaching, constant coaching, telling us to keep pushing, keep moving forward, that nothing can stop us. And the program has showed that nothing can stop us.
Thank you, Lance.
Good morning. My name is Ebenezer Agri from Northwestern State University. Being a part of this program has really helped me identify my love for community service. This past homecoming at NSU, we had the opportunity to host the scholars coming to homecoming, and we partnered with Ben Johnson Educational Center, where we did a community service project where we basically went around the local areas informing people within those areas about the opportunities that the Ben Johnson Educational Center was providing. We also had the opportunity to interact with young adults. Many of my scholars can attest that it was an amazing experience, just being able to talk to little kids and encourage them to keep going, especially in that rural area. We also had another opportunity to partner with Raising Cane's as they displayed the MLK exhibit across the state of Louisiana. As they came to Natchitoches, Derek Varno and I, another scholar, had the opportunity to talk about how MLK really helped us and informed us and educated us on the civil rights movement. And we had the opportunity to express what he did for us to other Black males and Black adults in that area. Being a part of this program has really helped me think outside the box whenever conducting service projects. Service is more than just collecting hours to make your resume look good. It's about doing what you can as a person to better your community. Dr. James Carter said at the Black Male Summit, I'll never forget it. He said, these men are going to change the world. And I truly believe that. And well, I truly believe that too.
Thank you. So, when we created at this program's inception, we sat around and thought, what would our program goals be? And of course, we chose your traditional metrics, strengthen the secondary to higher ed pipeline, increase retention, graduation rates for Black males. What we could have never anticipated was the latent sort of outcomes of this program, the brotherhood, self-efficacy, the social and network capital, a better understanding of diversity, even though it would appear that this is a group that would understand diversity. They learned yesterday about cognitive diversity and the differences in personalities and how to work together. All of these things, I don't think any of us could have anticipated, but we're thrilled to see these outcomes. Now, because I've worked at the system long enough, Dr. Clark is in his head asking, hey, what are the data points here? We have them. We'll share them in our annual report. But I can tell you, we reached out to each of the scholars who interned, to their supervisors, and we asked for sort of a pre-look at where they were when they got there. We asked for a post-look, and as always, these guys have just blown our socks off each time. So we'll be sharing that annual report with you guys very soon with data. So I need to take a moment because oftentimes we don't get to celebrate the real heroes who are behind this program. I feel like I'm always the face of this program and I love this program and I love our scholars, but this could not be done without the heroes who sit on each of our campuses. When we constructed this program, we knew at the system level, we needed folks who were on the ground and really helping us. And so I just want to take a minute to thank our campus facilitators. I doubt when they signed up for this that they knew they'd be a mentor, an advocate, a counselor, a friend, a cheerleader, a disciplinarian. I don't think they knew that, but we appreciate them. And so if we could just take a moment, I'd like, they'll probably bully me later for this, but I'm going to do it anyway, to introduce them to you guys. Dr. George Knopflin. And I found out today is Dr. Knopflin's birthday. Happy birthday. Dean Devonia Love Vaughn and Dean Sam Speed at Louisiana Tech. Miss Chris Youngblood at McNeese State University. Dr. Michael Snowden at Northwestern. Dr. Gabe Willis at Southeastern. Mr. Reuben Henderson at UL Lafayette. Mr. Tommy Nelson at ULM. And Dr. Desiree Anderson at the University of New Orleans. Thank you guys so much for everything you've done. I want to give a personal shout out to Dr. Stephen Kenny. He is also one of our campus facilitators at Nicholls State University. He was actually dissertating the entire time he was working with our scholars. He is at Nicholls, so he went through a hurricane. But he continued to be committed to this program, committed to our scholars. Dr. Stephen Kenny, would you please stand up? Like I said, I'll likely be bullied, so you could send some security out of this. And so we have quite a bit of time investment. You can see we have the folks, we've been putting in the work. We are still working on the financial capital piece. And so we know that that's going to require some fundraising efforts. And so we're here for it. We have set some ambitious goals. Otherwise, we wouldn't work with Jim Henderson. And so here's just a snapshot of what it costs to cover a scholar or the cohort. So to cover a scholar completely through this program, it's $30,000. Now that includes a trip abroad. Ms. Keisha Neal, who is at our system, was responsible for taking several of our scholars to get passports. If they need a suit, we will ensure that they're dressed for success. We are eliminating financial barriers that we don't think about at the system often, but when you're face to face and you're talking to a student, you begin to recognize that there are issues. So we want to make sure that we can knock down any barriers that exist. So our guys can succeed. So for a cohort, we're looking at $500,000. And so to date, we have a little over $250,000. We just received the Baptist Community Ministries grant, which we're excited about. I can tell you guys that our community recognizes this is a good program. I have not asked for money and been told no. Now, I have not gotten the amount I've asked for sometimes, but definitely have never been told no. One of the things we want to do in these fundraising efforts is to increase brand awareness and grow our social media presence for two reasons. We of course want the financial investment, but we want to change the narrative for African-American males. We want everyone to see that we have scholars right here in our UL system who are prepared to succeed. And then we want to increase our community partners. And that's simply because we believe that this is a community issue, a state issue. And so I think the investment needs to come from our community as well. So you will see our social media presence has grown tremendously over the last few months. We intend to continue that growth. We'd love to have you guys liking our social media pages. So we'll be rolling out that we'll go sort of full throttle on the fundraising efforts. So don't be surprised if links show up in your box asking for donations, and please share that with folks. Please share that with folks. And I believe that's all I have for you in regards to the program. I should acknowledge our current partners here, both in kind and financial investments. And I should also acknowledge that we had Blue Cross Blue Shield who sponsored this retreat for our scholars.
Claire, if you could mention a little bit about last night and the sponsors from last night as well.
Sure, absolutely. Last night, and a couple of the board members were able to join us. We had Louisiana Healthcare Connections partner with us, and they wanted to make sure our scholars enjoyed a really nice meal. So we had our meal at Mike Anderson's. We had several community partners join us, as well as board members. I think it's so important that our scholars get to engage with leaders constantly. They deserve a seat at the table and a voice at the table. And I think that we are definitely, because of you guys, we are definitely exposing them to that. So thank you.
And appreciate that. And Claire, thank you so much for your leadership. And also yesterday, the scholars went to the headquarters of a very important company to all of us in Louisiana, especially when you're running late and you're hungry. Raising Cane's, the home of the best chicken fingers that you can get on the planet. Todd Graves, who has 700 stores to run and a lot of fries to cook, took his time to give some lessons, some ideas, some thoughts, share his mentorship to these young men, take a lot of pictures, some that were planned, some that were unplanned. And when people give their time, that's their most precious commodity. And I just want to thank Todd Graves for investing in these young men. It's a wonderful tribute to the quality of the young men, to this program, certainly to Dr. Norris's leadership and the whole team. But thank you. And if you get a chance to get chicken today, please go to Raising Cane's.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. Do you guys have any questions for me or our scholars?
Claire, I do have one question. How are these young men chosen to be the representatives from their schools?
So one of the way in which we put this program together, we wanted to be very careful that we did not select folks who were already selected. So we were careful to select them in their sophomore year after they demonstrate grit, leadership, but we did not want it to just strongly be correlated, or this program to strongly be correlated with just the GPA. We wanted more than that. And so each institution has an application that goes out. There's sort of a call for students to submit their application, and then the campus makes the selection. As you can imagine, the campus supports the scholars quite a bit with their tuition and fees and just a lot of time and energy. And so I think it's best for the campuses to make that selection.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to say a word about these guys. I had the honor to meet a few of you guys last night and talk to you. And I'm just so impressed because it's not only, and we know we're sitting here at the University of Louisiana System Board of Supervisors, but as much as it's about grades, it's about putting yourself out there. And there's so many of you that took the time to put yourself out there and introduce yourself and get to know us. And I got to tell you, it doesn't go unnoticed, and great job. I'm really proud of this program by the UL system.
Okay, well, I don't have a question, but I just like to echo Ms. Stokes. I am so impressed with you guys. The first cohort, I know a little bit better than the second cohort, but impressed with all of you. I mean, continue to do the wonderful things you're doing. Take advantage of all of the things you're being exposed to, because it's so much more than a lot of your peers have been or will be able to, and probably a lot of us have been able to. So just continue doing what you do and impress us all the time. And thank you, Dr. Norris, for the wonderful job that you're doing with these young men and this program.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. At this time, we'll move into our other committee reports. First, Academic and Student Affairs, Dr. Clark.
I'm not sure if I need to read the script, mental telepathy. We just think alike. Is that what you said, Claire? We just go right into it.
That's it. So you know what to do.
I do. Before I begin, I do also want to echo the sentiments of the others that have talked about the Reginald F. Lewis scholars. Gentlemen, it certainly is inspiring to all of us when we get a chance to talk, interact, meet, learn from you. I think some of you last night put up with me in a way that you didn't have to, and I appreciate it. Demille, I know that Julie is speaking specifically to your willingness to go out and introduce Brian from McNeese, your conversation with LeVar. He's already texted me and talked to me about that. So it resonates what you do and your outreach and your willingness to help us think through things. It means more than you realize. So thank you for that. And for the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, we happen to have 4 items today on the agenda. 3 of those items are going to require approval. And 1 item is a discussion item. As mentioned earlier, Dr. Khan is not here. Dr. Claire Norris, the Vice President for Advancement, is going to provide the report. So Claire,
Sure
go
thing.
for it.
Thank you. So as Supervisor Clark said, I am not Dr. Khan. She is celebrating her birthday in Greece. It is evident that I picked the shortest straw. And so I'm just going to ask that you take it easy on me today, Dr. Clark. So
Now, wait a minute. Dr. Norris, what you're failing to say is that you've already engaged an hour of conversation.
It was more than
to
an
make
hour.
sure that all the questions were answered in advance so that I wouldn't put you on the spot. So I will refrain from being too inquisitive.
Just wanted to set the stage there. Thank you, Dr. Clark. So agenda item E1 is a request from Louisiana Tech University to terminate the graduate certificate in special education, mild or moderate for secondary education grades 6 through 12. Enrollment in the GC has been 0 for the past 3 academic years, which indicates no demand for the offering. And because there was no demand for the offering, it is not necessary to have a teach out plan in place. Agenda item E2 is a request from the University of New Orleans for the approval to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the International School for Louisiana. The proposed partnership will allow for UNO students pursuing the Bachelor of Arts in International Studies to complete the required internship at the public charter school. In addition, various cultural and academic activities and initiatives can be fostered between these partners. I should just add here that this MOU will go into effect upon signature, and it will be a 5-year commitment. And so I believe that this type of agreement will really generate synergies between the 2 institutions. And last on the consent agenda item is a request for approval of the Systems University's promotion in faculty rank and recommendations for tenure. In total, 105 faculty have been recommended for promotion in rank across the UL system, along with 94 faculty recommended for tenure. All requests were received by the UL system staff and were determined to be in line with the system policy. I should note that when Dr. Khan shared this information with me, I had an opportunity to analyze the data for diversity. And I will tell you guys that we saw a 2% uptick in the assistant professor position for Blacks and a 3% uptick for Asian, Hispanic, American Indian, Native, or other Pacific Islander. We did lump them together because of the small numbers, but we will continue to sort of disaggregate that data and share it with you soon. I should also mention that we met with the campus CAOs, and they have made quite a few efforts to bring diversity to our faculty rank and positions, including changing the way in which they do applications, to offering a strengthened sort of support system for our faculty of color. When we looked at the data, one of the things we have continued to really realize is that it's our area of struggle is in the recruitment piece. And so we are working really hard to ensure that we do a better job of recruiting at the campus level as well as the system level. You may remember that we rolled out Future of Academe. We thought there was an opportunity for us to grow our own. So our campuses have matched that energy. They are also doing a number of activities to ensure that we bring diversity to our campuses, and as well as to make sure that we're able to retain those faculty. And at the professor level, there was actually just no growth for Black faculty, but it's not surprising because that takes a little time. But we did see growth in other faculty members, and we grew from 11% to 18%. So that is a dramatic increase, and I think it has a lot to do with the efforts that our folks are making on campuses.
Dr.
So
Norris, when you said 11% to 18%, what category was that?
it was other, and so that
Okay.
encompasses international, that encompasses Asian, non-Black or non-Black. Again, we will disentangle that. See, our campuses collect. Any questions?
Dr. Norris, I'm not going to ask you a question. I'm going to actually ask Dr. Henderson a question.
Even better.
How does, well, not how does, but could you remind those of us on the board how you are operating or how the system is operating relative to the legislative request for tenure review? And I mean, it sparked my curiosity as I saw that we're just approving, a large number of tenured faculty. How does that affect your conversations, and or where are we with those conversations?
Well, thank you, Supervisor Clark. As you noticed, the deadline for the tenure committee to be appointed was in mid-July, and the first meeting was to be scheduled by August 1st. The UL system met its obligation to nominate on time. And the meeting has not been scheduled yet. I will tell you from the system, as a system representative, the system president nominates a person. I myself will serve. From our faculty, Phil Otter, who is the faculty senate president at University of Louisiana Lafayette, was elected by his peers to serve. And a young man who's kind of new to the conversation was appointed by the Commissioner of Higher Education. His name is Tijo Savoy. Will also serve. And so the three of us have had a number of conversations. I'm very pleased with the coordination among the faculty senate presidents. In fact, just this last Saturday at Northwestern State, Dr. Jones, Provost Hondel, and their faculty senate president, John Dunn, organized a faculty conversation where all the faculty senate presidents attended. Faculty representatives from all 9 institutions were present to have conversations about tenure, but also about shared governance and about the faculty relationship with administration. It was an extraordinarily healthy event. It's one they pledged to carry to other campuses. It's the first time I think we've seen faculty in a governance role have those conversations across campuses. Now, of course, we think about things systemically, but we do have 9 distinct faculties, and it's very important because it is a critical component of the university. So we're not blurring those lines, but we're having those conversations that lead to systemness. I've had a number of conversations with the chairman, who is the author of the bill, Senator Cathy from the Monroe area. He has remained very inquisitive, very open to conversation. He has asked me to help identify some tenure experts to come and talk, and I pledged to him I would find him some experts that are known to be very pro-tenure and experts that have been critical of tenure, and ensure that we have an open conversation. He has assured me multiple times that that's his intent, is to understand why tenure is important in academic institutions. Of course, my position has been well known, and it's been in the press that I think that indeterminate tenure is absolutely essential to the preservation of academic freedom and to our work in research and in scholarship. I think that it is it's been so since the beginnings of the academy, certainly since it was formalized in 1915. It was reformalized in 1940, added comments in 1971. This has been part and parcel to what we do. And I think when we have conversations, especially conversations that are held in good faith, it's an opportunity for us to educate those that don't live this world every single day. to dispel myths, to talk about the value of faculty, the resilience of faculty, their dedication to improving the human condition, because they are the ones that are essential for us to do that. Now, I'll also tell you that the Speaker of the House nominated 3 members of the House to be on the committee. Thomas Presley from the Shreveport area, Amy Freeman from, is that correct? I'm looking at Cammie, from New Orleans area, and Polly Thomas, who is a retired faculty member from the University of New Orleans, will serve. All 3 have been very supportive of higher education in general, certainly of UL system, and they'll be thoughtful participants in the process. I feel very comfortable where we are, and I believe that this will be an extraordinary conversation that probably defies what conventional wisdom would suggest it would be. We've seen tenure under attack in various parts of the country. Sometimes it can be politically expedient to create a caricature of tenure and then work hard against that caricature. That's not what I see in materializing in Louisiana.
I appreciate your, not only your insights, but also the way that you've taken the leadership and certainly the folks that you've appointed for our system. I think we're in good hands. I know that I've seen quite a bit of press and discussion that has been taking place, not only about this particular committee, but as you just referenced nationally. So please keep us abreast as you go forward.
Thank you.
All right. Any further clarifications or questions regarding the action items E1, E2, and E3 at this point in time? All right, then may I have a motion and a second, please, with regard to those? Motion from Supervisor Mark Romero,
Second.
a second from Supervisor Donahoe. Are there any further questions from the board? Any comments from the public? All right, if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is approved. Dr. Norris, I believe we do have a fourth item for discussion.
The last item, E4, is a request for approval of academic year 2022-23 academic planning document. I want to remind the board that Dr. Khan introduced this concept to you at our last board meeting. The Board of Regents recently changed the way in which universities are to pursue new academic programs. Letters of intent are no longer required. However, each university is now required to submit a planning document which identifies new programs of interest as well as rationale and need. This is a pilot and only addresses 1 year. Moving forward, the planning document will have a span of 3 years. All 9 planning documents were discussed among the UL system CAOs in July, with full support granted for moving forward. Upon approval of the planning documents by the Board of Supervisors for the University of Louisiana and the Board of Regents, campuses will be able to move forward with these program proposals. These proposals, once reviewed by system staff, will come to you for your consideration over the course of the next year. As you can see in front of you, there are a list of program concepts captured on the slide. Campus representatives are in the audience if you guys have any questions. But just to be sure that we are all on the same page, you are not approving any programs. You are only approving program concepts. And what that means is this is just a planning document for programs that our campuses would like to put forward. Regents wants to better understand what's happening and sort of get a better understanding of the layout for the year and soon 3 years. I think there will be an enormous amount of flexibility with Regents in doing this because we have to shift with the market. But this is what our campuses have put forward.
Dr. Norris, remind me, the conversation that is taking place is multi-system. In other words, other academic officers were involved in this, so that this is to be, I guess, from a Regent standpoint, an overarching conversation. So it's not just our system coming forward with our proposals.
That's correct.
In total.
That's correct.
And when you mentioned approval, we're not approving anything today. We're not voting at all. So
You're just approving the academic planning documents, but not the programs.
but
Or is it just discussion?
not with a vote. Is that
Not with the vote, not with the vote.
So we're approving by nodding, saying good
Yes.
job.
With the nod and
right.
amen.
All right, I just wanted to be sure that
Yep.
we're doing this appropriately. Ah, this is fun, Dr. Norris. This is great.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, no, my only comment is that I'm pleased to see the discussion of certificates continues, and I'm glad that our institutions are looking at that as ways to supplement the academic offerings and ways to increase the skills of our graduates. So thank you.
Excellent.
Any comments, questions, anything regarding any specific programs that is listed at this point, with, of course, the caveat that we'll see these again at some point in time.
Absolutely.
Mr. Clark, if I could add one thing, Claire was hired to do data. And when I had coffee with her, she says, she was explained the job to me. I said, just collect data and report data. As you can see, she's had some extra duties added to her role. And she is one of those people that it is very easy to exploit. I promise we are going to, I don't know if you saw at the end of True Grit, as they're riding the pony to try desperately to get the young girl, Maddie, to the doctor who's been bitten by a snake. And she said, Maddie's played out, Rooster. And he stabs her in this thigh with a knife and says she's got miles left in her before he runs to death. We're not doing that with Dr. Norris.
Yeah, they are. They are.
But we're approaching it. So she's got miles left in her, I promise you.
Thanks.
I'm sure she does, in spite of some people she works with. That's great. All right, Dr. Stokes.
I was gonna say that we might be able to vote with the proverbial thumbs up if we really
That-
wanted to.
Actually, I was in a groove, and so I wanted you guys to keep voting. Y'all were just saying yes to everything.
Yeah, exactly. But I really wanted to mention a couple of the certificates that I see here and just how forward thinking they are. And that's the molecular genetics program that's being proposed. Boy, if you could see the way the world of cancer care is moving toward that almost entirely. And we're going to have this disease, I think, wiped out within, I don't know, hopefully my lifetime, maybe my kid's lifetime. And this is the way that it's all moving. And the other one is the offshore wind. Really impressed that we're thinking for that. And it's certainly time for those sort of programs. So I'm also excited about these certificates I see being considered. All the other ones are great too. Just those two. I think they jumped at my attention.
All right, any further questions, comments? All right, is there any other business to come before the committee at this time? See no one affirming or thumbs up, so we'll go ahead.
Okay. Thank you,
Sheriff
Dr.
Garrett,
Clark,
to you.
and thank you, Dr. Norris.
Sure. And
At this,
we're gonna
sorry.
probably have a little disruption. I'm gonna grab the scholars and we're gonna go do a little bit of service. So thank you guys so much for everything, but excuse our disruption just briefly. Okay.
Thank you guys for joining us this morning.
Thank you all.
All right. And as the guides move on, we're going to go on to our next committee, which is athletics. I think Supervisor Romero is going to handle that matter for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 18 items on the athletic committee agenda today. All are consent items, and Mr. Bruce Janay will provide a brief overview of each item for us to consider. Bruce?
Thank you so much, Mr. Romero, for stepping up to the plate. Campuses are requesting approval of the following. The first item is from F1 from Grambling, revising their athletic home game complimentary ticket policy. What they want to do is go back and increase number of tickets for football, basketball, and baseball after a previous decrease that was approved by the board due to COVID. Item F2 from Grambling, approve a contract with Justin Wagar, head soccer coach. Items F3 through F7 from Louisiana Tech, approving contracts with Lane Burrow, head men's baseball coach, Calvin Hester, head men's basketball coach, Joshua Taylor, head women's softball coach, Matthew Terry, men's golf head coach, and assistant men's basketball coaches, Winston Hines, Darshawn McClellan, and Aaron Smith. Items F8 through F10 are for McNeese, requesting approval of contracts with Andrew Fitzgerald, head women's soccer coach, Brandon Gilroy, head men women's track coach, and James Landernote, head women's softball coach. Items F11 through F13 from Southeastern, contract with Jason Hayes, head women's tennis coach, Michael Reams, head track and field coach, and the assistant coaches for Ford Pemberton, assistant baseball coach, Gerald Salisbury, assistant baseball coach, Riley Conroy, assistant men's basketball coach, I.G. O'Shea, assistant women's basketball coach, Reneka Robertson, assistant women's basketball coach, and finally Kyle Wrong, associate men's basketball coach. Item F14 from University of Louisiana at Lafayette, requesting approval of amended contract for Matt Diggs, head baseball coach, Gerald Glasgow, head softball coach, and Theodore Slyman, head men's golf coach. And finally, F15 through 18 come from the University of New Orleans, contract with Amy Grebeck Blank, head coach beach volleyball, Brock Morrow, head coach men and women's track and field and cross country, Jeff Lorio, head coach men's golf, and requested amendment to the contract with Bertha Kanga, who is currently the head men and women's tennis coach. Those are all the items that we have today, Mr. Romero.
Thank you, Bruce. The agenda items have been reviewed by our staff and are recommended for approval. Of course, if any member has a question or wishes to discuss the item, please let me know. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I'd like to be recused from F3 through F7.
So noted,
Davis.
Mr. Davis. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the public? No one requires further clarification on the consent items. May I have a motion and a second for approval of items F1 to F18 with note that Mr. Davison is recusing himself from F3 to F7. Motion by Mr. Robinson,
I'll second the motion.
second by Brad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any other business to come before the committee at this time? Hearing none, that concludes the business of the athletic committee. And the next committee is facilities planning.
Right. Mr. Stevenson, would you please go over those items?
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam.
Stevens. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, we have 13 items on the Facilities Planning Committee. 13 are consent agenda items, and one is a discussion item. Mr. Bruce Janay from the System Office will give us a brief overview and do so by each campus.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stevens. And even though I have a lot of items, I will try to be as brief as possible. The first item is from Grambling, item G1, requesting approval to demolish 8 buildings, which are Jones Hall, Army ROTC, their laundry, property stores receiving, Old President's Garage, Fish Hatchery, Institutional Advancement, and Pavilion. These facilities have very high maintenance costs. They have reached their life expectancy and no longer serve a useful purpose. And what Grambling plans to do is over time to demolish them, because Grambling has to pay for the cost, so they will do this over time. Item G2 from Louisiana Tech, they want requesting approval to name various rooms within the 3 floors of the Integrated Engineering and Science Building, as well as designation of a training facility known as the Barbera Educational Research and Training Facility. Each of you were sent all the names that are detailed in the executive summary for all 3 floors of that building. Item G3 is from McNeese. Named the bridge spanning Contraband Bayou, the Richard R. Roden Bridge. Richard recently retired from McNeese after serving as Director of Facilities and Plant Operations from 1999 to 2022. In total, Mr. Roden has served the university for over 40 years. Wanted to point out that Mr. Roden has initiated, coordinated, and supervised more than $575 million in campus facility and infrastructure improvements, in 17 new campus buildings and numerous major renovations and facility expansion. He was also very instrumental in McNeese's recovery from 3 of the most devastating natural disasters that McNeese has experienced in its history, going back to Hurricane Rita in 2005 and back-to-back Hurricanes Laura and Delta in 2020. And on a personal note, I have had a chance to work with Richard, and he's just an outstanding person. So I think this tribute to the contraband bayou bridge that he's worked on for a number of years is very fitting. Item G4 from Nichols, requested approval to rename the College of Education, the Behavioral Sciences Building to the Dr. O. Cleveland Hill Hall, and rename the College of Science and Technology Building to the Dr. Marilyn Kilgan Hall. Both Dr. Hill and Dr. Kilgan have worked tirelessly in their respective fields at Nichols, and this honor would be a very fitting tribute to their dedication, support, and service to the university. Item G5 from Northwestern, they're requesting to name the new Health Performance Center the David and Sherry Morgan Health Performance Center. David and Sherry Morgan both have graduated from NSC from NSU with an undergraduate degree in business. The couple, who has deep Louisiana roots and ties, have donated $1.5 million that will go to Northwestern State new athletic strength and conditioning facility. The Morgan's gift is the single largest private gift in Northwestern State athletics history. Item G6, also from Northwestern, want to name the athletic field house complex the Donald G. Kelly Athletic Complex. Donald G. Kelly was one of the most respected and influential figures in state government for more than 2 decades, from serving from the 70s to the 90s. After serving as a delegate to the Louisiana Constitutional Convention in 73, he was elected to 5 consecutive terms in the Senate from 1976 to 1996, representing the parishes of Natchitoches, Wentz, Sabine, and Red River parishes. He was also a floor leader for Governors Edwin Edwards and Buddy Romer, and served on the powerful Budget and Finance committees. Item G7 from Northwestern, requested approval to name the new Prather Coliseum Court the Mike McConaughey Court. Coach McConaughey amassed 300 of his 682 career basketball wins at Northwestern State. In addition to the sheer volume of victories, Coach McConaughey took the Demons to the first 3 NCAA tournament berths in school history, winning games in 2001 and 2006. And this is the neat thing. The Demons 64-63 opening round win against number 3 seeded Iowa on Jermaine Wallace's buzzer beater 3-pointer remains one of March Madness defining upsets. Item G8 from Northwestern, named the new academic building, the Robert A. Lost Hall. This new building will replace Kaiser Hall, which was completed in the 1960s as the university's primary facility for classrooms, studios, teaching labs, auditorium, clinical spaces, and faculty offices. Dr. Alos guided Northwestern to extraordinary heights in enrollment growth, academic achievement, athletic success, facilities enhancement, and other major accomplishments during his tenure as president from 1986 to 1996. The Louisiana Scholars College was established under his leadership, and he was at the forefront of the organization of the Department of Creative and Performing Arts. Item G9 is from University of Louisiana Monroe, requesting to name the university baseball field the Lou Santamont Field. Lou Santamont served 2 separate tenures with, at the time, Northeast Louisiana University, beginning in 1968 when he served as a graduate assistant baseball coach through the 1970 season. His first term culminated with an appearance in the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletic World Series. That team finished the season as a runner-up in that World Series. In 1979, Lou became the first full-time baseball coach in NLU. After more than 54 years of service to the university, he continues to attend and support ULM functions, provide wise counsel to staff members, and serve as an ambassador to that community. Item G10 is also from the University of Louisiana Monroe, Approval for the execution of a grounds lease agreement between the university and the Biomedical Research and Innovation Park for the construction of a biomedical research facility on university property. This facility will be approximately 60,000 square feet of research on the property. Biomedical Research and Innovation Park will be responsible for designing, building, and maintaining the facility. The building will be located next to ULM's pharmacy program, which will provide additional lab space for researchers, private partner research agreements, student insurance, graduate fellowships, and economic development opportunities. The total cost of this project is approximately $30 million. This year in House Bill 2, the legislature approved funding of this project of $19.5 million, and the other money will come from grants and other entities. The grounds lease agreement will expire on the last day of August 2072, or at such time a donation of improvements is executed, whichever occurs first. Item G7, G11 is also from the University of Louisiana at Monroe, requesting approval to enter into a grounds facility and lease agreement with ULM Facilities Incorporated to construct a new artificial turf softball field. This project will include subsurface drainage built to specifications and standards that will install artificial turf at the playing surface, and this will greatly enhance the team's ability to compete, especially in wet conditions. ULM-FI anticipates total funding for the project will be approximately $800,000. The grounds and facility lease agreement will expire when the substantial completion document is signed and all construction is completed. Item G12, University of New Orleans, approval to enter into a grounds and facilities lease agreement with the University of New Orleans Research and Technology Foundation. This project will include development of property for educational, commercial, and residential uses. The project will be anchored by existing athletic facilities as well as newly constructed athletic facilities that will include dining and entertainment options. Housing will include hotels and apartments, including student-focused housing. This project will greatly enhance the visibility of the university, provide for great student experience, and create dynamic new revenue streams for the university. The foundation anticipates total funding for the project will be funded by commercial developers. The grounds and facility agreement will expire on the last day of December 2072, or at such time as a donation of improvements is executed, whichever occurs first. Item G13 from the University of New Orleans, approval to enter into a grounds and facility lease agreement with the UNO Foundation for 11 years to remove existing and install new scoreboards at the Senator Nat G. Kiefer University of New Orleans Lakefront Arena and Maestri Field and Baseball Stadium. New scoreboards will be used at athletic events, graduation, concerts, and special events. This project will include a very improved student experience at each venue, as well as the quantity and quality of advertising, which will serve as an additional revenue stream. The University of New Orleans Foundation anticipates total funding for the project will be approximately $2 million, which will be funded entirely by private funds. And finally, item G14 is from the University of Louisiana System. This is our annual approval of the fiscal year 2023 capital outlay budget requests and institutions' 5-year capital outlay plans. These plans have been submitted by each president after discussion with their staff to determine capital outlay needs for the next 5 years. Each of you have been sent the system consolidated plan and campus plan. And I've asked and invited each president to be in attendance today, should you have any questions specific to that campus. And at this time, I would like to go over a PowerPoint presentation that will be up on the screen. The first thing, to give you a summary, this capital outlay plan is for 124 projects in the year 2023-24, totaling approximately 473,000. And I wanted to point out that our list of deferred maintenance continues to grow. And even though we do get some funding on it every year that is shared with the campus, it is nearly not enough. So the campuses are trying to address these needs themselves. Next slide. I wanted to mention the capital outlay approval dates.
Excuse me, did you say 473,000 or
Million.
Million, I'm sorry, million.
I want to be sure.
Million, sorry. I wish it was that. Sorry. And I wanted to mention capital outlay approval dates. Of course, the board, if you all approve this plan today, the next submittal goes to Regents September 30th. Then Regents final approval October 19th. And then it's due to facility planning and control November 1st. And then this plan will be reviewed in the legislative process in 2023. Next slide. And then I wanted to mention, I've been contacting each of you about our campus site visits. And next week, we have the pleasure of going to University of New Orleans, Southeastern. And then next week, I will send out a invite for the other campuses. We have September 13th, 14th, September 19th, and September 29th. And we haven't been to campuses since before COVID. So I'm pleased that we're visiting all 9 campuses. And just wanted to show you some projects, even though we're not getting as much funding as we would like. Campuses are taking it upon themselves to make improvements at Grambling. They just got through with their mailroom renovation paid for by the general fund. And then one of the biggest things is very excited to have demolitions that were needed. You probably remember the Drew complex that had 9 buildings that just caved in. And then one of the places, Dunbar Hall, has been out there for a while. And the AC Lewis Old Library, we're pleased that those are being demolished, and the state was able to help fund those. At Carver Hall, through use of Title III federal funds, we were able to make improvements for a lot of door replacements to prevent flooding in that, and made a lot of good improvements in the lab rooms that were needed. At Louisiana Tech, that sculpture, the board approved that, and the money came for the Percent for Arts. And also through the foundation, we have a nice plaza that was constructed. Also excited that we have new student housing through innovative student facilities at Tech, cost of $44 million. Then also through auxiliary funds, they were able to have a Centennial Plaza renovation of their campus core. And you can see the beginning and end. It's a very, very nice core. And Tech Point continues to grow, and we look to have that finished in October of 23. And then, of course, as part of their remediation, continuing to make ADA improvements through campus. And then this is what I was talking about. That's going to be named a Richard R. Roden. This is the Contraband Bayou Erosion Retaining Wall, the final phase, finally completed September of 22. And then at Nichols, we had a restroom renovation that was very needed. That was part of their deferred maintenance and major repair. It was completed. What I tried to do is to show you all the projects that are in the works are completed since the last board meeting of August 21. Then at the Ellender Library, we worked on the Athletic Academic Success Center, and some of it from a NC2A grant, and it was also self-funded from auxiliary funds. And then at Northwestern, something that was very needed was a project at Sam Sibley overlay that came as a request from capital outlay. Then at the Demons Athletic Weight Room, from private donations. That was completed in July of 22, and it's very nice improvements. And then this one at the Dr. Randall Webb Wellness Recreation and Auxiliary Center. The roof was very much in need of replacement, and that was completed in June of 22. At Southeastern, the new Southeastern Alumni Center, and I remember talking to you all about working on a ground lease for that. It was a partnership with the Southeastern Foundation, totaling approximately $1 million. Also at Southeastern, University advancement of the foundation that was needed, another project approved by the board. Then at ULL, Madison Hall renovation and addition. This was a major project that was funded through capital outlay. We look for it to be completed in 2025. And then, of course, you know about the new engineering building that was from capital outlay and also from self-generated, total funding of 25 million, expected completion of 2026. And you can see some of the drawings at ULL, that this is something the board approved from capital outlay. It's a property acquisition for future healthcare, education, and nursing training. Also at ULL, New Iberia Research, federal CO6 from the grant reached Mackay Housing, and it came through a federal grant. Expect completion 2025. Then at ULM, we have the Hub Dining Hall, and it looks to be complete in August of 2022. And then the Stanger Young Leadership Center, it was 1.4 million to do this project, and you can see what an improvement was. Then finally at UNO, beach volleyball, trying to take on and make it, because it's in an NC2A sport. Completion of October 22 is very close to being completed. It'll be a very nice venue. Then at UNO, something that was very needed was a new science lab, and it came through private donations and their use of facility use fees. Completion of August of 22. And finally, this is a project that has been on the books for quite some time. It was demolishing a Biggin-Ville Hall, and the funds came from capital outlay as well as FEMA. Total cost of 3.4 million, and we look to have it completely demolished in November of 2022.
Bruce, you said funds from FEMA. What storm is that associated with? I don't remember a recent one.
Katrina.
Hurricane Katrina.
Katrina.
Okay.
That has
just
been
checking.
out there
Thank you.
that long, that UNO has been going on and on with the feds on it. And finally they settled everything, but quite a long process.
I'll say,
Supervisor Stokes, you want to say?
we were all a little scared that the building was going to fall onto the road in front of it. So it is such an overdue measure to be demolishing that building. I'm planning on either getting a picture from you guys or driving out there to post it online, because it's a miracle that we're finally getting rid of it. So thank you.
It is. It took a lot of negotiation, but UNO would not give up the fight. So very, very glad to see that. So, and we're going to replace it with K through 8 charter schools.
Mr. Janae, you've been busy. Obviously, you've got a large portion of our agenda today. Members, all these items have been reviewed by board and legal staff and recommended for approval. If you have any questions other than what's already been expressed or wish to discuss these items, please let me know.
Mr. Stevens, I don't have a question, but I do think I need to recuse myself from item G10. I'm not an official member of the Biomedical Research and Innovation Park Board, but I've sat in on meetings in a representative capacity. So I think I'm just going to ask to be recused from that item.
And we'll have the record reflected. Madam Chair, is recused from item 10. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Question on item G12. impressed by the scope and the size. Can I get just a little bit more in terms of what total costs? This is the UNO lease agreement with all the private donations. It sounds quite extensive. I'm certainly in favor, but curious what cost and timing is on this.
And I thought that we might have a question on that Supervisor Clark. So I've asked Dr. Niccolo to make sure he was present, along with his athletic director, Mr. Tim Duncan.
Great.
Thank you, Dr. Clark, members of the board. This is an exciting development. My partnership takes advantage of underutilized lakefront property that driven out that direction of a surprising to nothing there. And we have been working with a number of folks and developers that see have this vision. For me, I think this project provides for revenue that will help us serve our educational mission, grow the university. So you're asking for a dollar figure. I don't have a specific number. It is hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what it sounded like. Maybe you want to talk about the athletic. Yeah, we are looking to renovate, update athletic facilities to what we use for it. Analyze our current facilities. And I think I'll anticipate maybe one question. At a previous board meeting, this board approved the referendum for the student referendum in November on football. This project does not hinge on that. It may involve a stadium, but the reasoning again, there are many high schools in New Orleans, specifically the Philly area, Lakefront area, that have no place to play. There's one stadium tag formerly that is literally Friday morning to Sunday. That's an opportunity. There's also, might have heard about the Major League Soccer. So there are opportunities here, regardless of how that goes.
Excellent. And timing in terms of, I mean, we're approving the lease and the lease starts the process. Any idea in terms of what is apt to come first and or what we will see actually occur?
Yeah, the people that we spoke to research CBRA to see what starts. Obviously, somebody like that amongst the starts, but some of the revenue generating facilities. So there's a little bit of research that have to apply to.
If I may, I just want to make a comment that, you know, the New Orleans area and especially Gentilly and that area that UNO is in suffered so greatly as a result of Katrina. And to see some activity out there and some redevelopment and in money, you know, being put into it by a developer gives me great, great hope. Because it's just when you drive through there, you think to yourself, I'm on a lakefront in New Orleans. This should be better than this. And I think that this is such a good concrete step. I'm so excited about this project. And I really think it could definitely change the trajectory of UNO, but it could change the trajectory of that whole part of New Orleans, which is so underutilized that it would in essence change the trajectory of New Orleans, I believe. So a little bit of that and a lot of this. And thank you so much for the work that I know you've done to try to get this to come to fruition. And I just pray and hope that it does, in fact, all come to fruition. So thank you so much, guys.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public? If no one requires further clarification of agenda items, may I have a motion, a second for approval of items G1 to G14?
So
Peterson makes the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Estes makes, seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye. Anybody opposed? Motion passes. This time we can now go to finance, I believe. Is that right, Madam Chair?
That's correct. Chair Robinson will address the items on the Finance Committee.
thank you, Madam Chair.
We have 9 items on the consent agenda for the Finance Committee. 8 of which are consent items and one is for information and reporting purposes. Mr. Mish, would you provide us with an overview of the consent items?
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. H1 is Louisiana Tech's request for approval to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Louisiana Delta Community College. Under conditions established by the MOU, LDCC, degree-seeking full-time employees would be able to enroll at Louisiana Tech for up to 6 hours per quarter or a discounted cost of $25 per credit hour, not to exceed $75 per 3 credit hour undergraduate course plus fees, and up to 6 hours per quarter for discount at a discounted cost of $50 per credit hour, not to exceed $150 per quarter for a graduate course plus required fees. Louisiana Tech full-time employees would be able to enroll at LDCC for up to 6 hours per semester for a discounted price of $25 per credit hour, not to exceed $75 per credit hour for undergraduate course plus fees. The undergraduate rates will be charged to LDCC students, essentially the same discount rates that Tech charges its own employees. The MOU is effective July 1, 2022 and will terminate on June 30, 2027. System staff has also begun discussions with LCTCS to possibly broaden the MOU to other institutions. H2 is Nicholls State University's request for approval to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement with South Louisiana Economic Council Incorporated. SLEC was specifically created for the purpose of supporting development of the region's economic base. Both Nicholls State University and SLEC have worked together throughout the years on projects specifically designed to enhance economic development. At present, there is an existing cooperative endeavor agreement that defines the relationship between both parties, which was approved by the board on June 24th, 2024. The new cooperative endeavor agreement further defines the relationship between Nicholls and SLEC and the manner in which their combined efforts focus on economic development of the Bayou region and help recover from the impact of recent storms and the pandemic. The term of the agreement is 20 years with 1-year options to renew. H3, Northwestern State University's request for approval to spend revenues received from leased property as allowed by Louisiana Revised Statute 173367. Louisiana Revised Statute 173367 requires revenues received from leased property to be used for the benefit of the university where the leased property is located. The statute requires universities to use the funds to alleviate safety hazards and other bona fide emergency conditions, to make needed major repairs to buildings, grounds, streets, parking lots, purchase land, upgrade utility systems of that institution, for new capital construction or capital acquisitions, for establishment of permanent endowment funds from which investment earnings are used for scholarships or salaries or as a supplement for salaries, or for expenses directly related to scholarly work for faculty members at the college or university, or for other operating expenses upon approval of the appropriate post-secondary education management board. In 2008, Northwestern received $4.4 million for a natural gas lease of university property in DeSoto Parish. This tract of land was donated to Northwestern by the late Mr. John Henry Crow. As previously approved by the board, the university has permanently endowed these funds for scholarships, and the university will continue to maintain that endowment. For future collections, Northwestern requests board approval to use these funds for any of the purposes currently allowed by Louisiana by Statute 173367 and for any amendments to the statute. H4 is University of Louisiana Lafayette's request for approval to enter one or more intergovernmental agreements with the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries for acquisition of property using funds appropriated by Act 170 of 2022. Act 170 appropriated $9 million to Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries for the department to purchase 2,000 acres of land located in St. James and LaBouche parishes from Bayou Cheval Land Company to be owned by the University of Louisiana Lafayette and used for collaborations on wetland assimilation, mitigation, as well as ecological environmental research. To carry out their acquisition, the university is seeking approval to enter 2 intergovernmental agreements with wildlife fisheries. The first agreement would be for the purchase of the land in the name of the university, and the second agreement would establish for long-term collaboration between wildlife and fisheries and ULL for the property's care, operation, maintenance, joint R&D activities, and revenue sharing. The partnership would advance UL Lafayette and UL Systems efforts in the areas of climate change, carbon capture, ecology, environmental technologies, sustainability, and clean energy, enhance the university's R&D competitiveness nationally. Wildlife fisheries will be solely responsible for the care and operation of the maintenance of the land under the same standards that the department performs for similarly situated properties owned and controlled by wildlife fisheries. ULL and wildlife fisheries will equally share in certain revenue generated by the property. Wildlife fisheries will use a portion of its share for the care and maintenance operation of the property, and UL Lafayette will use its portion to advance academic research programs and infrastructure areas of joint interest to both parties. The term of the intergovernmental agreement for the care, maintenance, operation, use of the property is for 99 years. Either party would be able to terminate the agreement if UL Lafayette sells, conveys, or otherwise transfers title of all or a portion of the property. H5 is University of New Orleans request for approval to amend its food service lease agreement with Compass Group USA Incorporated, Chartwells. On July 1, 2019, UNO entered into a 10-year lease with Chartwells for Chartwells to provide meal services to the university. The terms of the agreement require Chartwells to make lease payments to UNO, reimburse UNO for utility costs, provide funding, facility improvements, equipment maintenance, meal scholarships, internships, catering, and other financial consideration for exchange of the university providing a 10-year facility lease to Chartwells. UNO now requests approval to amend the agreement. The amendment would extend the original term by 5 years. In exchange, Chartwells will expend $1.5 million in additional facility improvements. The financial consideration of the original agreement would continue through the 5-year extended period. The amendment effective date, September 1, 2022, and the extended agreement would expire June 30th, 2034. H6, University of New Orleans request to formally authorize the assistant president to initiate the approval process of the necessary documents to allow the university to opt in the cooperative endeavor agreement between the state of Louisiana and Louisiana Energy Partners. The University of New Orleans needs to upgrade its energy management infrastructure. The university, with the assistance of its financial advisor, System Securities, along with technical and legal advisors, developed a strategy that will provide the university with more energy efficient infrastructure and without increasing the university's annual overall cost. The strategy would include a public-private partnership with Louisiana Energy Partners, a joint venture created by Bernhard LLC and Johnson Controls Incorporated, corporations with extensive experience in energy management. This initiative would require the university to opt in to an existing cooperative endeavor agreement between the state and LAEP, which was competitively cured by the state of Louisiana. That cooperative endeavor agreement was reviewed by the Division of Administration, Attorney General, JLCB, and other state offices. The recommendation today is that the board formally authorize the Assistant President to initiate the approval process through the Division of Administration and the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget. Final approval of the transaction will be recommended to the board at the October meeting, and no obligation is to be incurred until that final.
Eddie, if I could on that, to clarify to board members, because the microphones don't work well. This obligates the system in no way to any transaction whatsoever. What this authorizes us to do is what you informally authorized in April. Is formally authorize us to begin working with the Division of Administration on the assuring that the project meets the dictates of the cooperative endeavor agreement and that we can opt into the agreement. It does not obligate us at all. You've been sent some documents that are very complex. There are a number of moving instruments associated with this. We'll share more of those documents as they come available over the coming 30 days. And by October is when you would make it, is when you would consider any obligation for the system. I want to make sure that that's clear.
H7, University of Louisiana Systems request for acceptance of fiscal year 22 financial and compliance and federal award programs representation letters for Louisiana Tech, McNeese, Southeastern, UL Lafayette, UL Monroe, and University of New Orleans. These are letters of representation that the Office of Legislative Auditor needs for the board to approve for the system and the campuses being audited this year. H8, University of Louisiana Systems request for approval for fiscal year 23 operating budgets, including organizational charts, undergraduate, graduate mandatory attendance fees, scholarships, and system shared costs. Pull up the. This is a budget, a summary of constitutes all the universities. And annually, as part of the budget process, institutions submit their budget information to the system, including the operating budget, revenues, expenditures, mandatory attendance costs, employee information, scholarships, fee exemptions, and auxiliary operations. The system compiles the budget information to create the University of Louisiana system budget that you see, which is a very broad summary. This has been a particular positive budget year for higher education. This year's budget includes considerable budget increases for formula, faculty pay increases, mandated cost increases, and Title IX funding. The system received $5.5 million in formula increases, $12.9 million in faculty salary increases, $9.8 million in mandatory cost increases, and $1.1 million in Title IX funding.
Eddie, if you could go back to that prior slide, I think it's important for the board members to understand a significant amount in that 21-22 year is actually state general fund that was put into the supplemental appropriation, which comes near the end of the session. Those dollars were not available for last fiscal year. That should actually be included from an optics perspective in our operating fund for this current year. That's an accounting transaction that it's included in last year's fund. But what that does is it frees up those resources, and those resources will count towards this year. Actually, if you look at year-to-year comparisons, we have about a 14% increase because of the leadership of Governor Edwards and certainly the leadership of members of the legislature. This has been an extraordinary year in terms of investment for us. This chart doesn't give it justice for those people that made those investments in us. It's the accounting. It's the way you have to depict it for an accounting purpose. But I certainly wanted the governor and our legislators to get the credit that they deserve for this significant investment in our work.
And if I may, because when I first saw this, I thought 1.1% growth in a year where there's 9% inflation, I mean, would not be adequate. So I'm pleased to hear. So what I'm understanding is that it was allocated in the supplemental for this year, and it'll kind of be what they call a backfill situation, sort of yeah.
That's the technical accounting term.
That's it, yeah.
86.
I know. I'm always like, exactly what do you mean by backfill? But no, that's very good, because I was taken aback by the 1.1 in the environment we're in at the moment.
The funds were appropriated very late in the fiscal year in 22 and couldn't be spent. So those monies were recorded in 22, but they're transferred to 23. So those funds will be spent in 23. And it does change the numbers. And
That's good.
kind of go into that.
Yeah, which is probably appropriate. I will again say, given the inflation we're going through.
And other charges, can you give me some examples?
There is a difference in that, and that's exactly why those differences is because those monies received in 22 and then transferred into 23. And so it showed we put that money into other charges because it actually leaves the operating fund and it's put into restricted funds where they'll be spent. Campuses also received 2.9 million in one-time line item appropriations for specific projects. And to talk about what we just mentioned, in addition, through Act 170, campuses received supplemental appropriations of 17.7 million for needs related to hurricane recovery, stabilization, ERP upgrades, as well as other diverse campus needs. We're grateful to the governor and the legislature for their strong investment in support of higher education. The budget summary comparison of fiscal year shows an increase of 5.3 million. However, the actual increase in recurring general fund revenue is over 29 million or 12%. The difference is mostly a result of one-time appropriations and the $17.7 million budget adjustment recorded at the end of 22 for Act 170. Act 170 one-time funds have been carried forward in 23 and will be spent in 23. Tuition has remained unchanged for the past several years, and tuition will remain the same for 2023. There was a small increase in fees for the energy surcharge, which increased by an average of $1.60 per credit hour for 22. Campus costs for natural gas, electricity, water have increased. Costs for natural gas have increased considerably. Campus reported natural gas cost increases over the last 2 years of 76%. And it's really putting a strain on the budget. All institutions have budgets for faculty pay increases. Faculty salary increases range from 4% to 5.4%. The average faculty salary increase for the system is 4.5%. With the use of self-generated funds, all campuses have also budgeted for unclassified staff increases. The increases range from 2% to 5%, with the average unclassified salary increase being 3.5% for the system. Civil service employees will also receive market rate increases. Institutions will use funding for the mandated cost increases to pay for increased costs related to Office of Risk Management increases of 6.7 million, civil service employee market rate adjustments of 2.2 million, and group insurance increases of 1.8 million. Interestingly, employee pension costs have actually declined this year at $1.1 million, which is great news for us. Funding will also provide funding for Title IX, a Title IX summit, which will take place this fall. The summit will allow campus Title IX personnel to network and to discuss Title IX issues and initiatives. These funds are expected to be recurring, and campuses may use their funds to hire additional personnel as well as other recurring costs. Next slide. With state general fund increases and slight self-generated, basically stable, state funding now comprise 30% and self-generated comprises 70% of total budget revenue. State funds have been trending slightly up since 2021, which is a good sign. Next. With increasing appropriations, total revenue has also trended up since 21. Budget to self-generated revenue is relatively flat from last year for recent years. Slide 5. The chart shows general fund has increased this year by about 5 million, but as I mentioned earlier, the increase is actually much greater than that. Most of the additional state revenue has been earmarked for specific purposes, however. Tuition has remained about the same. And then, of course, they have a small increase in energy surcharge. On the expenditure side, budgeted expenditures are consistent to last year. Personal services still make up about 71% of the total budget. And this completes the consent items, Mr. Robinson. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
The consent agenda has been reviewed by staff and it's recommended for approval by staff. Does any member of the board have any questions?
I'd like to go back to H1 to just a moment, and Eddie addressed part of my question, I guess, and that is there's going to be an examination or a look to possibly expand the MOU between, but I wasn't sure between whom.
Well, it's general discussions at this point. I talked with LCDCS about this very MOU, and the possibility of expanding to other institutions that were open to that. And that's where we are now.
Potential
With
systemic-
LDCC itself or with other?
Other institutions under the LCTCS.
Okay, and
system to system. And so taking this and making it across all institutions, potentially.
okay, do we already have any other institutions that have an MOU agreement between them that share this reciprocal?
I believe so. I think Northwestern has one. and
Northwestern has one with Bossier Parish Community College. I believe there was, at one time, there was a conversation between ULM and LDCC. Also between Nichols and Fletcher Technical Community College, but that's been some years ago that one was developed. But I think that there's, by bringing the systems together to have this conversation about what would this look like with a systemic agreement that doesn't take away from any of the bilateral agreements, because I'm a firm believer that the relationships that exist in the development of these bilateral, or just that is enhanced with the development of these bilateral agreements is important. Again, South Louisiana Community College and UL Lafayette, it's another example. McNeese and Sowella, those are great. But if there's an opportunity for us to do something systemically, I think that it makes sense, and I appreciate Eddie reaching out to start that conversation.
No, I certainly endorse and encourage, continue to look at how to expand and how to include more. I think that I certainly commend, Tech and Delta Community College for, elevating this conversation. I'd also like to see if there's an opportunity with other state agencies even in terms of, trying to, figure out ways to, help other state employees access our institutions in a way that is affordable and meaningful, for both sides. So
It's interesting you bring that up. Just this last week, Louisiana State Civil Service sent out another announcement across the entirety of the civil service ranks about Compete Louisiana and how the state of Louisiana can access this transparent fee structure and obtain all of the support structures associated with Compete Louisiana. And you're right. If we're not developing our own people, then we're missing a right opportunity, both for students, but more importantly, for talent development. And so thank you for that advice and guidance.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Recognizing no questions, may I have a motion and a second to approve
Motion.
item? Mr. Romero,
second.
Dr. Clark. Without objections, those items are approved. At this time, Mr. Jeanette will provide an overview of item H9, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Roberts. Item H9, University of Louisiana System, report on the internal and external audit activity, the period of June 20th to August 21st. Earlier this week, I emailed each of you a listing of all the internal and external audits completed by various auditors since the last board meeting. Also included in that summary are internal audits that are currently in progress and a follow-up timetable to ensure that recommendations made in previous report are followed up timely. This is a report only, Mr. Robinson, and no action by the board is necessary.
Okay, any comments, questions? Recognizing none. That completes the business of the Finance Committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robinson. At this time, we'll move to the Personnel Committee. Ms. Donahoe, could you please go through those items?
Yes, thank you so much. Ms. Keisha Neal is making her way to the thing. She will be giving us an overview. We have 4 items on the Personnel Committee agenda today that are being presented on the consent agenda. Ms. Keisha Neal will provide an overview of all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Donahoe. Good morning, Chair Pierre, Dr. Henderson, and board members. We have item I1, Grambling State University's request for approval to appoint Dr. Rudolph Ellis as interim vice president for student affairs effective July 1st, 2022. Item I2, Southeastern Louisiana University's request for approval to appoint Dr. Teray Lopez as dean of the College of Business effective July 2nd, 2022. Item I3, University of Louisiana at Lafayette's request for approval to appoint Dr. Lisa Broussard as interim dean of the College of Nursing and Health Sciences effective July 1st, 2022. Item I4, University of Louisiana at Lafayette's request for approval to appoint Dr. Paula Montgomery as interim dean of the College of Education effective July 1st, 2022. Mrs. Donahoe, that includes the items to be considered.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from any board member? Any comments from or questions from the public? These items have been reviewed by staff and are recommended for approval. Do I have a motion or second to approve these items?
So moved.
Moved by, Brad Stevens, second,
Second.
Mr. Robinson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So the motion passes. I believe we have one of our appointees here, and we'd like to have them introduced to us. Dr. Crane.
Supervisor Donahoe, as they walk forward, I would like to point out that both Dr. Rudolph Ellis and Dr. Lisa Broussard are graduates of the Management and Leadership Institute. We had about 15 attendees of the Management and Leadership Institute in the room earlier. I noticed that as they were identifying the campus facilitators for their RFL Lewis Scholars Program, 10 of those facilitators are either graduates of or currently participants in the Management and Leadership Institute. I don't know a greater testament to the quality of the program that Caprice IU is leading for us than that. And I just wanted to thank her publicly for that.
Dr. Crane.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Henderson. It's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Teray Lopez. Dr. Lopez has been a longstanding member of our faculty at the College of Business Southeastern. She's been extremely successful across all of the typical domains of work that faculty pursue, teaching, research, and service. Now she's entered a new domain, and that's leadership. She's a product of Southeastern with 2 degrees. She's also a product of the UL system because her doctorate is from Louisiana Tech. So we're very, very pleased to have her in this leadership role with the College of Business. We very much appreciate your supporting the recommendation to appoint her to it, and I'll introduce you to Dr. Lopez.
Thank you, Dr. Crane, and thank you to the Board of Supervisors. I am very eager to get started working with our students, our faculty and staff, supporting them. And I really think our position at Southeastern is vital to the economic development of our area, and I'm excited to work on that. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I think that concludes the business of the Personnel Committee.
Thank you so much, Ms. Donahoe. At this time, we'll move to our Assistant President's report. Dr. Henderson, would you please give us your report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, you were emailed the campus personnel actions for review. Staff has reviewed all of these requests and recommends approval. Madam Chair, we'll need a motion and a second to approve those.
Can we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Clark,
Second, Davidson.
second, Mr. Davidson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That stands approved.
Thank you. Members, on Tuesday night, several of you and several of us attended an opening of an art exhibit at the Louisiana Arts and Science Museum in downtown Baton Rouge. The museum selected the installation from Louisiana Tech's Vista Center. That's the visual integration of science through art. It was a competitive call for proposals, and of course, this was selected. It was just a stunning display of the intersection of art and science, and it features the work of more than 40 undergraduates. I hope each of you will have a chance to check it out. The work was led by Dr. Jamie Newman and, of course, Nick Bustamante. Jamie from the science side. Her biology PhD is from a little school called MIT, so she's kind of smart. Nick Bustamante adds the art to it. I think to me, it's emblematic of their president, who had an architect undergrad degree and engineering graduate degrees. And you don't necessarily think of Les as an artist, but he certainly understands it well. And I think this reflects his vision. To be on display until July 31st of next year, and encourage you to see it. Also at the, you'll see the picture on your right. That is a guy named Christopher Kennedy, and he's holding up this book. This is not this particular book, but a copy of this book. This is a story of a Louisiana legend that really is underappreciated outside of the circles of Louisiana Tech. To talk about the impact of Joe IA on athletics, on leadership, on countless men and women who grew under his tutelage and his mentorship. I just encourage you to pick the book up. You won't regret it. He is an extraordinary example. His name is on the stadium for a reason. He is the one that initiated the military-friendly school concept when 22 of his football players told him in the spring of 1943 they were going overseas. And he held their scholarships and he wrote them letters every single month. And all 22 of those men came back and played for him in 1946. He is an icon, and I want to congratulate Christopher Kennedy and the entire Louisiana Tech family on this incredible work. So thank you for that. And my dad was one of those 22, so I'm kind of very proud of that. Shifting gears to the content experts. This summer, Katie Dawson and our content experts assembled several faculty and staff development opportunities through the Systems Bridging the Divide summer series. The series had active participation from more than 250 faculty members with diverse content on mental and financial health and grant writing. The content's available in perpetuity through the Systems YouTube channel and the Systems Moodle instance. Speaking of Katie, earlier this week, she successfully defended her dissertation. And after her November commencement, she will be Dr. Katie Dawson. So please join me in congratulating her. Now that she's completed the doctorate, maybe I can get some work out of her. Cammy, why did you put that in the script? I can't believe you did that. I'm just kidding, Katie. Katie has done incredible work, and her coaches have been working together with her on helping our Compete students this fall to get them enrolled in classes. She and the entire Compete team have worked tirelessly all summer on what's called CLASS, and this is extraordinary. And I don't think I will do it justice, but CLASS is the Compete LA student system. It's a custom CRM, customer relationship management process that connects to our member institution student systems. It allows our coaches to track the students in real time. I want to thank Katie, Dr. Tom Hoover, who's also completed his doctorate just recently, and our Compete coaches for their work on CLASS. It is truly first class. Additionally, it shouldn't be a surprise that the biggest barrier for Compete Louisiana students and for many continuing students is financial. You know, we're going to have some enrollment pressures at several of our institutions this fall. And it is, while we're celebrating some of the largest freshman classes that we've seen, traditional students, it's the adult students and those students that are coming back to us that have really borne the brunt of the economic crunch, most of it associated with 2 years of pandemic and 5 named storms. Every opportunity we have to knock those barriers down, especially through Compete Louisiana and other programs, is essential. Now, as part of the answer for the financial burdens, Brandy Gross, who is an extraordinary one of our Compete Louisiana coaches, has taken on the role of being the financial aid expert. She will be the student success specialist associated with financial aid, guiding them through the maze of requirements, helping them attain the best financial aid package, access to scholarships, and deal with issues of student debt. As you noticed yesterday, President Biden announced that for those earning under $125,000 or married couples that earn less than $250,000, $10,000, up to $10,000 of their student debt will be waived. That is an extraordinary step in alleviating some of the pressures on students for student debt. Another piece of that got less attention, but is absolutely as important, is the change in the accrual of interest on student loans. It was such a predatory environment in student loans that was punitive to students, where you had them making substantial payments over a long period of time and realized they still haven't gotten to the principal yet. That's changed. And I think that's going to open the path for many people to come into colleges. It's going to alleviate some of the debt burden. And it did something that I was very concerned about. It doesn't touch the debt from high earners and those of us that hold a substantial part of student debt, who got that debt going to law school and medical school. And so it was an interesting balance that they chose. And I think it's going to, especially for low income students, is going to pave the way for them to move on in life or to return to school. Earlier this month, or I guess it was the end of July, the presidents gathered for our annual President's Retreat. and we discussed issues and opportunities facing all of our institution. I want to personally thank Dr. Joe Cantor from Louisiana Department of Health for providing an update on COVID-19 and monkeypox, and it has nothing to do with the New Iberia Research Center. I was able to explain that to Joe. It raised our confidence for a fall semester that is much closer to 2019. And I mentioned this to the group, but I want to mention it to you. Joe Cantor is the State Director of Public Health. He's a busy guy, but he has never failed to answer a text message or an email immediately with candor, with honesty, and he is a true partner. And I'm so grateful to him for his work and what he has done over these for his career, but certainly over these last couple of years of pandemic. We also welcome Joe Cohn. He told me that he was such a proponent of free speech, he gave us one. He is the policy director for the Foundation of Individual Rights and Expression, and he led a discussion with our group on free expression on campus. With a society that's driven by polarizing views, we anticipate an abundance of opportunities for demonstrations and free expressions on our campuses. I think we have a walkout that might be scheduled at one campus in the coming week from I don't know if it's a large group, the Young Democratic Socialists of Louisiana. And I, for one, am a little sick. I'd love every time those kinds of things happen, because the pursuit of truth is based on the pursuit of free expression. Now, a few years ago, our board adopted one of the nation's most progressive policies on free speech, and it's progressive before it became a bad word. It was a good word, one that received a green light rating from FIRE, again, Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. We've made some technical updates to our system's free expression policy as a result of new legislation from Chuck Owen, who has become a great partner of ours in the legislature. Our policy remains one that ensures our universities are bastions of free expression. Coming into election years, I think you will see a great deal of evidence on that. Now, along with the free expression policy revision, we've revised a couple of other policies and created one new policy as a result of legislation. I want to invite Dr. Erica Calais to the table to talk about those policies that provide you with some updates on Title IX. Erica.
Good morning, I think, or is it now afternoon?
Right at this point.
Never know.
Just-
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Henderson, and thank you, Chair Pierre and board members for having me. In addition to the revisions made to the free speech policy, we have made technical changes to the system's power-based violence policy and crisis leave policy. A special thank you to Dr. Michelle Caruso for helping to champion the legislation for the crisis leave policy. The legislation changed the definition of leave recipient from an employee who has a personal emergency to an employee who has a need to receive leave from the leave pool. While it seems like that change is minor, it is very impactful, will be very impactful to our employees, especially those who do not have enough leave that they've earned to take time off to help their family members or themselves. Also passed during the recent session was Act 464, also known as the Student Due Process and Protection Act, which requires all public post-secondary systems to develop a student due process policy. That policy was emailed to you yesterday. Basically, the legislation provides new guidance on due processes for students who are accused of violating disciplinary or conduct rules for non-academic reasons and can potentially face suspension of more than 10 days or expulsion. These students can have an attorney or a non-attorney advocate fully participate during any disciplinary proceeding to address the alleged violation. The right applies to both the student who has been accused of the violation and to the student who is the alleged victim. So in the legislation, they did try to make it fair. So each had an opportunity to have an advocate there. The legislation also applies to recognized student organizations. Our campuses are currently putting some practices in place to make sure they are in compliance with the UL system policy and legislation. Any questions about that, those policies? Okay, now moving on to Title IX matters. Yesterday, I disseminated a document to you that provided somewhat of a snapshot of where our institutions are with the Title IX work. You'll notice that all of our institutions have their policies on their websites. The document also provides information about the structure of the Title IX offices, sexual prevention and awareness programs, and MOUs with the institution's respective local criminal justice agencies. Doing this annual exercise is beneficial as it helps us to identify and address any deficits that may exist. For the past few years, we feel as though we have been in a place where we are being more reactive than proactive. With the new DOE regs and the recent legislation, the power-based violence legislation, I feel like, and I'm sure many can agree with me, definitely our Title IX coordinators, that it felt like we've been having knee-jerk reactions. So we are definitely trying to do things where we are being more proactive. We do have a 700-page document from Department of Education that Mr. DeQueer is helping us look through on proposed regulations for Title IX. So that is coming, but again, we are working very hard to be proactive. And in that same vein, we do have a Title IX summit approaching in October, and my colleague, Mr. Mesh, did steal a little bit of my thunder, but I won't hold it against him. Our Title IX summit will be held on the campus of University of New Orleans. Thank you, Dr. Niccolo, for hosting this for us. It will be on October 3rd and 4th. I did email a save the date to you, but I will also send a registration link since registration is now open. Again, the inaugural University of Louisiana System Title IX Summit will feature programs, trainings, resources, and lessons learned in creating a coordinated community response to sexual violence. Additionally, participants will gain knowledge about the breadth of Title IX, including areas such as gender equity and Title IX in athletics. Ultimately, the purpose of the summit is to broaden the perspectives of our stakeholders about Title IX. Here recently, especially in the last 2 years, we've been seeing a lot in the media. We've been hearing a lot from legislators about Title IX. And some may come to think that Title IX is only a sexual violence regulation or law, but it's not. It's so much more than that. And we want to use the summit to highlight some of those various aspects of Title IX. And so we are very excited about the summit, and one of our very own alums who has broken barriers and paved the way for many female athletes will be the morning keynote speaker. Legendary softball coach Yvette Girard has agreed to speak to us on the morning of October 4th. Again, I hope that you all can attend. If we have some athletic directors in the audience, I know we have one. I expect to see your registration soon because I did send an email to all of our athletic directors, our senior women administrators, public safety, so even the presidents, we're expecting to see it there. So do we have any questions about the summit or anything that I addressed? No. All right, thank you.
Erica, thank you. And thank you for your just perpetual exemplary work. Members, if you'll remember when we were in New Orleans not too long ago, we got to ride on some boats. I'm very excited to share to you that the members of our University of Louisiana Maritime Academy Task Force have been named, and the task force will have its first meeting in September. The members include a representative from each member institution, industry leaders, including pilots of ships and barges, or captains of barges, offshore energy experts, and even an appointee from Congressman Graves' office will be on the task force. The maritime industry is looking for us as a solution to strategically grow their workforce, and we look forward to meeting their needs. And it is certainly a wonderful world on the other side of that levee. Now, speaking of workforce challenges, everyone knows that we have a challenge when it comes to nursing. And in the area of nursing, I want to ask President Rick Gallo just to come to the table for just a brief second. If this board will remember, in 2017, you authorized, and I'm so glad she's here, Dr. Meg Brown. Is that me? Come on up. Dr. Walton. Why don't you come forward as well? 2017, this board took action to approve Grambling to renew offering their degree in nursing. We got a little bit of news in the last couple of weeks that is important, and it signifies the quality of this program. 100% of Grambling's graduates passed the NCLEX exam on their first attempt. And that just doesn't happen as a matter of routine. That happens because of leadership from the president to the provost and certainly to the program director. And it's a credit to the faculty and the students of Grambling. And I wanted to welcome you to the table and ask you to say a few words to this board about the program that you've created. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
You have to move that particular mic very close to you.
Do I have to push?
Is it green? There you
It's
go.
green.
Perfect.
Again, good afternoon. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Henderson and the board for supporting our plan to put a new BSN program at Grambling State University. And if I may, I want to take this opportunity to recognize and appreciate the School of Nursing from Northwestern State University in Louisiana, because they were the ones who stepped up and integrated our students who were still in the program so that they could continue to pursue their BSN. And as we started to work on our program, Dr. Dana Clausen routinely called to check to see how things were going and if I needed anything. And when we started to go through the accreditation process, Dr. Pam Simmons called and said, I see that you're about to go through accreditation. These are the things you need to do. Let me know if there's anything else you need. And they were the perfect example of what a sister school would be. So I want to let you know that we appreciate that. Now, I came to Grambling the fall of 14, which means I have been there long enough to have 3 presidents. And I do appreciate, I welcome the arrival of President Gallo because we did share a priority of starting a new BSN program. I want to thank the board for maintaining that stability of that leadership, because that's a lengthy process to have to go through. And you don't want to really have to keep changing the process when you change the leader. I wanted to also know I appreciate his leadership style while we were going through that process. I told him that I use like a football analogy, which I won't share with everybody else, but he did remove all my barriers as we were trying to get it done. And I appreciated that. That made it a lot easier. So I want to say today that I think that the program is solid. We got accredited in January of 2021 before the first class graduated in April of 2021. We are now fully approved by Louisiana State Board of Nursing. Our curriculum has demonstrated that the students will achieve the expected learning outcomes. We do have many measurements to evaluate them throughout the curriculum, and we can say that it's ultimately measured by NCLEX pass rate of that 100%. We are committed to increasing the number of nurses in our profession, as well as also meeting one of the goals for Grambling State University, and that is to increase the diversity of nursing in the workplace. So again, we look forward to your continued support because I promise you I will be back.
I want to ditto what Dr. Brown was saying about your support as well as President Gallo's support. So when they started the process of bringing it back, I was in sponsored programs, but I was in the background cheering on. So when I joined as Provost Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Brown and I had frequent meetings, and she could articulate exactly the measures that she had put in place to ensure that our students progressing through the program had the skill sets that would support them being successful on the NCLEX exam. And she went beyond, I think, really what probably most, many programs would do to ensure that their students were successful. She realized that the university played a role in making sure that those students were comfortable with exams that have a format of the NCLEX exam. And she tests them at every point. And she didn't share this, but one of the individuals that sat for the NCLEX exam that graduated this past spring called Dr. Brown up and said, the test was easy. You tested us so much that it was an easy process. And so I want to thank Dr. Brown for her leadership, because when she would call me up and say, 12 is tested, they all passed. And I said, well, I'm not telling President Gallo yet. I want to wait until more have tested. And so I'm just excited here today. And I want to thank both President Gallo and Dr. Brown.
Mr. President.
And I just want to say how much I appreciate their leadership, Dr. Brown and Dr. Walton, and especially as you know, there have been individuals along the way who wanted us to lower the standards, quite frankly, to admit more students, and for those who perhaps didn't make the cut, you know, there's always the attempt to you know, backdoor the decisions of the leadership in the program to say, well, you know, my child is prepared, they should be in. And we've, you know, I appreciate the fact that they stood their ground. I think the standards for admissions to the professional component of the School of Nursing is solid. And again, I appreciate the standards being high. I appreciate them continuing to work with those students and wrapping all of the support they needed around them to ensure that they were in fact ready and could see NCLEX as an easy test to take because they were prepared. So again, I thank the board again for you know, making it possible. We would not be here had the board not supported the reopening of the program. And we had the opportunity to go before the Board of Regents yesterday. And of course, despite many challenges there, you know, they approved us as well. And we're just grateful and certainly look forward to continuing to do the work.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, Dr. Brown mentioned Pam Simmons and also Dana Clausen. I saw recently at Pam Simmons' retirement ceremony, she was flanked by Dr. Noreen Planchok and Dr. Maxine Johnson. The three of them together in that picture represented about 135 years of experience in nurse education. When you add Dr. Clausen to that mix, it's another 35 years as young as she may appear. I mentioned that to say that the wealth of experience we have amongst the nurse faculty in our state is remarkable, but also to mention that all of those people I mentioned have retired. That is one of the biggest challenges we're going to face as we try to prepare nurses for the profession. As we are an aging population, our nurse faculty are aging, and it's going to be important upon us, our presidents, us at the system level, and of course you as board members, to ensure that we're putting practices in place and we're seeking the resources to ensure that we can have nurse faculty for the coming generations. It's going to be the challenge of our day, but for today, it's nice to honor success and excellence. And I want to thank all three of you for your leadership and for being here today. Appreciate you very much. Lastly, members, before we go to an agenda item, I want to mention yesterday something that happened at Louisiana Board of Regents. This was, there was a conversation about announcing some expanded pathways, especially some early college pathways to our institutions. And anytime you have a conversation that touches on admissions criteria and pathways into institutions, it can become a enlivened conversation. I'll leave it at that. There were some aspects of the approach that some of our institutions and I had some challenges with. throughout the effort. Commissioner Reed, Deputy Commissioner Tristan Denley were remarkably accessible, engaged us in conversations. We talked about some of our objections, some of our challenges, and we agreed that we would continue to work until we could satisfy those, not on the sake of institutions, but for the sake of students. And it was a remarkably healthy conversation. But at the meeting yesterday, it was some other objections that were made to the admissions criteria. And I think it's important that we understand the origin and the context around admissions criteria. They started early part of this century, the early part of 2000s, actually under Commissioner Joe Savoy, where we established admissions criteria for our institutions. We had a new community college system that was just starting to offer transferable general education. We had regional institutions that were the bastions of their communities and the regional economies that they serve. And they serve a lot of non-traditional students and traditional students that come from rural areas. We had 3 statewide research institutions, and the challenge put to them was to start investing in it even more in developing practical, applicable research that could advance the state of Louisiana. And we've seen remarkable examples of that at University of New Orleans and at Louisiana Tech. Certainly the R1 designation achieved by the University of Louisiana Lafayette is rooted in those decisions to create admissions criteria. And then finally, to have a flagship university that could compete with the likes of Texas A&M and University of Texas and the Georgia Techs of the world and others. That's what the admissions criteria are for. Associated with admissions criteria, though, it's not just the entry requirements. It's an assortment, a litany of policy statements and policy positions and funding decisions that are associated with those tiers. If we are going to, as a state, go into a conversation about those tiers, we need to discuss all of the implications associated with that and start ensuring that our funding policy aligns with our admissions policies. And those conversations are going to play out over the coming months. We will be providing you with lots of information, encourage you to be part of the conversation, and look forward to that. And I know that we've got partners at the Board of Regents, of course, at the LSU system and LCTCS and the Southern system who will engage in good faith and ensure that we're advancing education policy for the sake of the students that we serve, the employers that will employ them, and the communities in which they'll live. It may not be a smooth road forward, but it will be a road to a destination I think we'll all be proud of. We want to be good faith partners in that. I doubt there's any questions because that was a pretty abstract, just soliloquy, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But if not, I need to move to item J3, which is Louisiana Tech's request for approval of resolution authorizing and ratifying actions necessary by the president to protect the interests of the university, including filing suit on behalf of the university for the repairs to the defective construction of the press box on the football stadium. Madam Chair, we'll need to go into executive session, and to do such, we'd need a motion and a second and a roll call vote.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Stevens, a second by Ms. Donahoe. I do have to read the statement. The Board of Supervisors for the University of Louisiana System may meet in executive session to discuss litigation matters under the provisions of Louisiana Revised Statute, 42:17. While in executive session, the board may not make any motions or take any votes. Okay. So at this time, Ms. Carroll, can you do a roll call vote?
Dr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Davison,
Yes.
Ms. Donahoe,
Yes.
Mr. Estes,
Yes.
Ms. Leatherman,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Pierre,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Romero,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Stokes.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carroll. The board will now adjourn to executive session.
Yeah.
Good.
need some reinforcements on this side of the table. Right. It's lovely down there.
Oh. A lot of what's in action. Everybody back? The Board of Supervisors for the University of Louisiana System met in executive session to discuss litigation matters. While in executive session, no motions were made nor votes taken. Is there a motion to reconvene in open session? Moved by Mr. Stevens,
Second.
second by Dr. Clark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No.
Madam Chair, we'll need a motion in a second to ratify item J3.
Make
So
a
moved.
motion, we ratify item J3.
Okay, moved by Mr. Stevens, second by Ms. Donahoe. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries.
Madam Chair, that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Henderson. At this time, we'll move to the board chair's report. The first item, proposed rule revision. In your folders, you will find a copy of a proposed rule revision to section 4, committees, B, standing committees. As this would be a rule change, the revision will be listed on our October meeting agenda, giving you at least 30 days to review prior to a vote. So I'd actually take the opportunity to review that rule prior to October meeting.
And are there changes that have been made that we should be looking at?
Yes,
specifically?
this adds an audit committee to our board. If you remember, we met, had a conversation with the board officers about a proposed change to our audit function to segregate our audit function from our operations functions. Bruce Janae has done a fabulous job wearing multiple hats, but when you wear too many hats, it starts to impinge upon the ability to do things, especially something as central as audit. Bruce is going to be expanding his role in convening athletic directors and chiefs of police and facilities directors. And I thank him for taking that on because it's going to be arduous work. But the audit function will be separated out. And ideally, once the new committee is formed, that committee will agree to an audit charter and will work with me to hire a director of audit. That is the auditor's exclusive role. That person will need to report to both the board and to me. And it's a standard audit function. That's one that we had hoped to create some years ago, but with pandemic and other things and hurricanes, we've delayed it. Well, now is the time to implement this. And I think it's one that you'll find very healthy for the system. It brings back some things we had in place, I think, many years ago that had gone by the wayside during budget cuts and those kinds of things. It's a best practice for boards like this, protects us, but it also protects the public's trust in what we do.
So, Madam Chair, this that we were given, this is the standing rules and everything that we already have, and only under B6, that's the only new addition.
Yes, ma'am, that is
Okay,
correct.
thank
I will take that back. There's also there was a change under the committees. Our bylaws actually had where the chair of each of our committees, the chair of the academic committee, would serve as the designee on the Board of Regents academic committee. And then the chair of our facilities committee would serve as the representative on the Board of Regents committee. And that's not how we have done it in practice. It's been one representative, so it cleans that language up.
And where is that reflected?
That's an H. That's an H, where it has the Board of Regents committees listed. It had on the other side, there was a second column that had the chairs of each of our committees. And that just, again, was not something that we had done in practice.
The language reads odd. I'm not sure it's a complete sentence.
Is it not a complete sentence?
Mm,
We'll
to serve.
we'll make sure that that's edited to make sense and submit to you. And we'll also send you the original document so that you can track changes and see
Yeah, I would
specifically
like to
what
see
was
that.
there and what's been, that'll make it, I think, clearer.
Any other questions on that item? Okay, so again, we'll be reviewing that at our October board meeting. That'll be on the agenda at that time. Dinner with the higher ed boards. At the invitation of the LSU board chair, many of our board members were able to attend a dinner on August 2nd. All higher ed boards were well represented at the event, and Governor John Bell Edwards was our honored guest. Along with words of appreciation from each board chair, the governor noted the legislative accomplishments from the past year, focusing on gains achieved in higher education community for students and faculty. It was good to meet with other system board members as we have common challenges and goals. Our calendar. To help you plan your schedule, we will be distributing the calendar of meetings for 2023 this week. Ms. Carroll will be sending that via email to each of us. Reminder about our next board meeting will be on October 27th, and that's planned on being here in Baton Rouge. Is there any further business to come before the board at this time? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn? It's been moved and I think second that we adjourn today's meeting. Any